Getting ready to put the eggs into lockdown, you're going to need a few things assembled before you start. So the first one is just a towel, because you're going to remove all of the eggs and put them on a towel, and this will prevent them from rolling around. You're going to need an external, for my incubator, it doesn't have a built-in humidity monitor, so you're going to need an extra one if you don't have one built into your incubator already. So these are just cheap little ones that I can set in there to monitor my humidity level. We're also going to need some warm water, so you're going to fill the reservoir with some warm water to start bringing up that humidity. And we're also going to replace the cardboard insert in the incubator with this stuff, and this is just this cheap they use it in motorhomes and stuff, like a shelf liner that stops things from sliding around, and I've just cut a hole in it to make it fit this incubator. And this stuff is really important because it doesn't get soaking wet, for one, when you put it in there and the humidity is high, but also you can wash it after, and the chicks do not like a smooth surface, so they will get something called spraddle leg or spray leg. So that's when the little tendons on their legs get injured because they can't get a grip on the surface. So you'll see their legs splayed right out to the side, and it's difficult for them to walk around and move, and that's because they've been hatched onto a smooth surface. So this will give them a little bit of grip. You can wash it out and reuse it a whole bunch of times. So you're going to remove the top of your incubator and remove all of the eggs and put them on your towel. This is also a really good time to check over your eggs. You should have been checking over as they were being turned if you're doing it manually, but if you weren't, it's a good time to check over them. You can candle them at this stage and see if there's any that are not developing or infertile. So I started with 15 eggs, 2 of them were infertile, and then 2 of them were not developing, and I could tell because they looked like this. So the next thing I'm going to do is to remove this cardboard insert, and this just gives the eggs a little more traction so they weren't rolling around on the smooth plastic. So I'm going to take that piece out and put this, this little grippy stuff in there as well. It's also good time to check your incubator that there's not any cracks and things where a chick's safety could be at risk once they're hatched. So here's an example where this is the water reservoir, but it's got a nice little screen over it. And if I didn't put the screen over there, there is a chance that the chick could get in here and drown or get stuck. So you want to make sure that there's no spots that a chick could get injured in. And now I'm going to add some water in here. Our humidity here, I'm on the coast, the west coast, so we have a very high average humidity. So I do a dry hatch method, and I have not added any water in here prior to going into lockdown. So if you're looking at my humidity reader right here, the humidity just in this room now is at 70%. So absolutely did not need to add any additional humidity in for the first stages of the hatching process. So now I'm going to add in my eggs, and this is going to be the last time that you're touching them until they hatch. I like on this incubator to put them with their the chubby side out, because that's where the air cell is, and I can then have a really good view as they're starting to pip and to hatch. Just going to prop that humidity meter in there as well, just so I can keep an eye on it and make sure that I don't need to add any more additional water as I go. And this one has an external component where I can add the water in over here and it fills it up. So lockdown means you're locking them in now. So once I put this on, we're not touching it again until they hatch. So you want your humidity level to be 55 to 65% at a minimum. So if it's a little higher than that, then that's okay. But you're wanting to keep it at least 55 to 65% humidity. And what that does is it softens the shell and the internal membrane, making it easier for the chick to hatch. Open an incubator. This is why it's called lockdown. So you want to lock it down, put the lid on, and then you are going to leave it and not open it again, because what happens when you open it, open the incubator, the humidity level drops. And you can get something happen called shrink wrapping, where that membrane that is surrounding the chick sort of starts to shrink and seals in that chick, making it impossible for them to move in there, because they have to rotate within the egg in order to pip or to zip around the end of the shell to be able to push their body out. So if they're kind of sucked in there too tightly by the membrane, it's difficult for the chick to move. So you absolutely want to keep that humidity level high and give the chick as best a chance as possible to So the next few days, the chick is really working on absorbing that yolk and drying out those blood vessels in preparation for hatching. So sometimes you'll have, or I've had an early chick arrive. So today's day 15 and I've had them on day 17 emerge before the rest of them do. So don't be surprised by that. So make sure that you've got your brooder set up and that you're ready for them to arrive. Don't panic if you have an early arriver, and leave it in there, because it will chirp and help encourage the other ones to break through the shell. You'll even notice sometimes that they'll go over and start pecking at the shell and helping the next one emerge from its shell. So they'll help each other out. So don't worry about that. Leave it in there. You need to leave them in until they are fluffy and dry before you remove them, and they're good in there for 48 hours, because they've just absorbed all of the nutrients from the yolk. So they're set up for the next day or two. When the chick hatches, it is not going to require any food or water for the first few days, because it has absorbed all of the nutrients that are in the yolk. So don't add any food or water into the incubator to feed them as soon as they hatch. It's just going to make a mucky mess, and they're just going to fall into it and over it and just make a mess in there. They do not require that. They don't need that until they move into the brooder. How do you get your brooder set up for your new chicks? The first thing to do is to get a brooder that is an adequate size, because the quail chicks are so incredibly tiny when they first hatch. It can be deceiving to stick to something that is quite small. So you want to go with something that is going to be able to contain them reasonably comfortably for at least the first 3, maybe 4 weeks, depending on your climate. I use a 50-liter Sterilite tote, and I find that that is definitely an adequate space. I usually am hatching between 12 and 18 chicks out at a time, and this will more than be adequate for that period of time. In the bottom, I also put a puppy pad and then some paper toweling on top of that. When quail are first hatched, they are too small for the wood shavings. Usually I use a white white wood shavings on there. The quail are too small for that during their first week. So use a puppy pad or paper toweling, something that's got a little bit of grip. Don't just put them on a smooth plastic surface. That will cause some challenges with their legs. Having a large enough brooder that you can have your heat source, your heat lamp at one end, and giving them room that they can move out of the direct heat and cool off if they get too hot is important. For the first week, I always use a heat lamp. I have tried the heat plate, which I have as well, and I use that on week 2. Week 1, what I have found is they move out from underneath the heat plate and then can't seem to find their way back in, particularly at night, so then they're chirping all night long. Whereas the heat lamp, then I don't have that problem. So I use the heat lamp for the first week, and then I switch to the heat plate once they're a little bit older and kind of know how to navigate back to the heat when it's dark. I also place a thermometer inside the inside the brooder, so then I can monitor the temperature underneath the heat to make sure that it is not too hot or too cold. During the first week after hatching, you want to keep the brooder 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's 32 to 35 degrees Celsius. After the first 7 days, you can decrease that temperature every week by a few degrees. So week 2, you're looking at 85 to 90 degrees. Week 3, 80 to 85, until you're around the 3 to 4 week and they're fully feathered out, and you'll be able to tell that because they won't have any yellow of the chick fluff still on them. They'll be fully feathered out, and then they can definitely handle room temperatures, like household temperatures. Underneath the heat lamp, I also like to place a little stuffed animal. So I just use this one. It's a little pig, and it can get tossed into the wash easily. I use this because they like to snuggle up to something under the heat, and you'll find them underneath the ears or the arms of it, and it kind of provides them a level of comfort that they would normally be getting from their mother. So you'll find them all around it and snuggled up underneath it, and I feel like it gives them some additional physical support to help them feel more comfortable. So some people are tempted to use a feather duster for the chicks to snuggle in when they're young because they don't have a mother bird there. So I would highly advise against doing that. I did try it. I read somewhere online that this was a great idea, and I gave it a try, and within the first 2 hours I had a strangled chick. So they get up there, particularly with ostrich feathers, they will get up into the feathers, and there's long strands, and they will twist and turn and are at high risk of strangling themselves. So big mistake and lesson learned there, but I would highly advise against it. You'll see lots of people saying, oh, this is the greatest thing, but there is definitely a risk there for strangulation, particularly if the feather duster has ostrich feathers. I would definitely go for a small stuffed animal as well, and I've used this for the last few years, and it works great and provides them that support and warmth that they're looking for. So the next thing that you need to make sure that you have is a water source. If you look at the base of this one, it's extremely narrow, so I can just fit my finger around in there. It's very, very small. So this is designed for chicks or quail, and you're going to want to, even with quail, they are not the smartest little creature, so they will drown if they have an opportunity. So I put little pebbles all around in here so that the chick can't lay on the water directly, but they can still get their beak in and get the water that is located in between the rocks. So you can use marbles or anything else. Especially if you're using any kind of a larger waterer, you're going to absolutely make sure that you've got lots of pebbles and rocks around so that the chick can't lay and get into the water and drown. So you're going to fill that up, and you're going to put that fairly close to your heat source. So just around the edge of where your heat would be is where you want the water. So in a large tote like the one that I have here, or brooder, you don't want to put it at the far end from where the heat is. So the chicks have to, you know, traipse all the way to the other end in order to get a drink. You want to keep it in close proximity. Then as they get older, you can move it to the other end from where the heat lamp is. But right now you're going to want it to be pretty close. So this is the area that the heat will be, where I've put the pig, so the heat lamp will come down and shine there. I have my thermometer to monitor the temperature to make sure that it's an adequate temperature. And this is the water. I'm going to set it right about there, and I am then going to put a few crumbles just onto the paper toweling directly, and you're going to want to use a I use turkey crumbles, so it's 26% protein. It comes already in small crumbles, but it's not even small enough for those tiny little quail chicks. So you're going to use like a coffee grinder or a mortar and pestle and grind it up so that it's almost at a powder consistency, or just before powder. So that they can eat that. It only takes a week or so before they're able to handle the crumbles without you needing to grind them any more. So they grow super fast. After week 1, I will switch to this type of a feeder here for them. It's less messy than having it directly on the paper towel, and then they're not pooping in it either. But the quail will actually climb right inside those holes, but with this style of feeder, they're able to find their way out. I have used these ones here and have had the occasion where the chick will actually climb into the hole and up and into the larger canister and get stuck. So I would suggest something like this to start with, or at least taking off the main part of the feeder and just using the red part if you're using this style for the first week or so. Like I said, quail aren't the most intelligent little creatures. They sure are cute though. Chicks grow really quickly, as you'll discover. So they will learn to flutter and fly, and they're kind of like popcorn. They just pop up out of the brooder and then they're all over your room, and that can be a bit of a challenge because they can't find their way back. So I have used some window screen, so it's just like this. And I use some clothes pegs and then just clip it around the top of the brooder. It acts as a deterrent for my dog to be sticking her nose right in the brooder and giving everything a look. Stops the quail from popping out and flying around. It's super cheap and easy to use and easy to clean. You can just hose it off after if it gets dusty, and I just clip it to the edges of the brooder, particularly around week 2 as they start to flutter their little wings. It's good to have something in mind to place over the top that still is breathable, so you don't want to trap any of that warm air coming from your heat lamp in there and overheat the chicks. So you want something that air is able to move easily through, and screen works extremely well for that. Hatching usually starts on around day 17, and it'll start with pipping. So the chick will break the internal membrane and the outside of the shell, just like this. Then it will wait for about 24 hours at least, taking a rest and breathing in and absorbing air and absorbing that yolk and drying up those blood vessels. So it will have a long rest at this stage. So you don't want to rush this process or get anxious about it, just let it happen. The chick will start to zip, and this can happen very quickly. So this chick here, it took about 5 minutes for it to zip around the egg and pop out. They're really wet when they hatch, and their legs will be quite weak and sometimes curled up a little bit, so it'll take them a little bit of time to dry off, get fluffy, and within a few hours they'll be running around inside of the incubator. They're going to be tired as well. They're going to have a lot of rest, and they're going to chirp to encourage the other chicks to join them.
So the chicks are ready to leave the incubator and go to the brooder. So when you first get them, you want to dip their beak into the water so that they know where to find it. So you only need to do it with a few of them. They will quickly teach each other where it is. You also want to make sure that there is food out and available for them as well. And you can drop it straight onto piece of paper toweling, or I put it in a little top of a yogurt lid, very shallow, so that they don't have to try and climb in.